I never thought my grocery list would land someone in handcuffs, but that's exactly what happened last weekend. For years, I'd been keeping detailed notes on my daughter-in-law Melissa's behavior, the snide comments about my cooking, the eye rolls when I spoke, how she'd accidentally exclude me from family photos. My son Mark was blind to it all, swept up in her manipulative charm. When she found my notebook while rummaging through my purse at our family barbecue, she thought she'd finally caught me doing something terrible. She called the police right there in front of everyone, claiming I was planning something sinister. But when the officers arrived and read what I'd actually written, everything changed. You see, I wasn't just documenting Melissa's subtle cruelty. I was gathering evidence of something far worse that would shock our entire family. And by the end of that night, it wasn't me in trouble with the law. I raised Mark as a single mother in a small Connecticut town after his father left when he was just 4. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I worked double shifts at Danbury Hospital as a nurse to put him through college, the first in our family to go. Mark was always my gentle boy, sensitive, kind, the type who'd bring home injured birds and nurse them back to health. When he brought Melissa home 5 years ago, something felt off immediately. She came from old New England money, summers in Martha's Vineyard, private schools, the works. At first, she was perfectly pleasant, complimenting my modest colonial home with its worn furniture and faded wallpaper. "It's so quaint," she'd say, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. The wedding was my first humiliation. As mother of the groom, I'd saved for months to buy a beautiful navy dress from Nordstrom. The night before the ceremony, Melissa's mother casually mentioned the dress code had changed. "Oh, didn't Melissa tell you? We're all wearing pastels now." My navy dress stood out in every photo, a dark smudge among their coordinated blush and mint ensembles. Later, I overheard Melissa telling her bridesmaids, "Poor thing, she just doesn't understand these things." After they married, Mark changed. He visited less, called less. When they did come over, he'd correct my grammar or exchange glances with Melissa when I spoke. At Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I prepared my mother's traditional stuffing recipe. Melissa took one bite and said, "This is interesting. In our family, we use a Williams-Sonoma recipe with chestnuts and sage." She'd brought her own version, and everyone raved about it. My dish sat largely untouched. The grand gesture started as my secret project last Christmas. I'd been saving every spare dollar from my retirement checks to buy them a down payment for a house. Their apartment in New Haven was small, and they talked constantly about needing more space, especially since they'd been trying for a baby. $47,000, nearly all my savings, set aside in a special account. I kept detailed notes about potential neighborhoods, school districts, and properties in a small leather notebook I always carried in my purse. This same notebook contained my observations about Melissa. I started keeping these notes after noticing bruises on Mark's wrists last Easter. When I asked about them privately, he laughed it off. "Just clumsy, Mom." But I recognized the look in his eyes. It was the same look I had when hiding my own bruises from Mark's father years ago. That's when I began documenting everything. Dates, times, behaviors, things Mark said that raised red flags. I started researching domestic abuse when men are the victims, how rarely it's reported, how often it's dismissed. My notebook wasn't just a bitter mother-in-law's complaints. It was evidence. Evidence I wasn't sure how to use yet, but I knew someday I might need it. What I didn't know was how soon that day would come. Last Saturday was Mark's 35th birthday. I'd spent days preparing for the backyard barbecue at my house, marinating his favorite Memphis-style ribs, baking the chocolate espresso cake he loved as a child, stringing Edison bulbs across the patio. It was the first family gathering I'd hosted since Christmas, and I wanted everything to be perfect. Melissa and Mark arrived an hour late. "Traffic on I-84, she explained, though my brother, who'd taken the same route, arrived on time. Mark hugged me weakly, whispering, "Looks great, Mom." I noticed he was wearing long sleeves despite the June heat. Melissa immediately took over, rearranging my carefully set table, commenting that the plates didn't match. I brought some disposable ones from Crate and Barrel, she said, pulling them from her designer tote. They're biodegradable, so much more modern. My brother Tom watched this with narrowed eyes. He'd never warmed to Melissa, calling her Connecticut's answer to Lady Macbeth when she wasn't around. His wife Susan squeezed my hand under the table. As everyone gathered on the patio, I noticed Mark flinch when Melissa touched his shoulder. "Sweetheart," she said too loudly, "would you mind getting me some of that white wine? The red will stain my teeth for the photos." Her fingers dug into his shoulder. That familiar, sick feeling rose in my stomach. The tension built throughout the afternoon. My casserole was too heavy for summer. My gift for Mark, a first edition of his favorite Vonnegut novel I'd hunted down at specialty bookstores across New England, was thoughtful, but where would they put it in their already cluttered apartment? Around 4 p.m., I went inside to get the cake. When I returned, Melissa was standing by the gift table, my purse in her hands. "Looking for something?" I asked, setting down the cake. She startled, but recovered quickly. "Just borrowing some Tylenol. Mark's being difficult about his headache." That same tight smile. Throughout dinner, I caught her watching me, something calculated in her expression. Mark was quieter than usual, barely touching his food. When he reached for the salt, his sleeve rode up. The bruises weren't on his wrists anymore. They circled his forearm like a bracelet. After cake, while everyone was mingling, I went to the bathroom and checked my purse. The notebook was still there, but slightly askew from how I always positioned it. My heart raced. Had she read it? How much? When I returned to the patio, Melissa was on her phone, texting rapidly. Mark approached me, his voice low. "Mom, is everything okay? Melissa said you seemed upset earlier." Before I could answer, Melissa appeared at his side. "Mark, darling, did you tell your mother about our news?" Her voice carried across the yard, causing conversations to halt. "What news?" I asked. "We've decided to move to Seattle," she announced. "Mark's been offered a position at their main office. Isn't it exciting? We'll be leaving next month." The shock must have shown on my face. Mark had mentioned nothing about this. Seattle was nearly 3,000 miles away. When did this happen?" I stammered. "Oh, it's been in the works for weeks," Melissa said, her arms snaking around Mark's waist. "Mark wanted to tell you sooner, but I said your birthday party would be the perfect time. Make it a celebration of new beginnings." Mark wouldn't meet my eyes. His shoulders hunched forward, like they used to when he'd get bad grades in school, afraid of disappointing me. Before I could process this, the sound of a car pulling into my driveway caught everyone's attention. 2 police cruisers, lights flashing but sirens off. "Who called the police?" Tom asked, standing up. Melissa stepped forward, her face a mask of concern. "I did," she said calmly. "I'm sorry, Joan, but I had to. I found something very disturbing in your purse." Time seemed to slow as 2 officers approached the patio. One was young, probably no older than Mark. The other was a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, who introduced herself as Officer Bennett. "We received a call about a concerning situation," she said, looking around at the frozen tableau of my family gathering. Melissa stepped forward, her voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "I found this in my mother-in-law's purse," she said, producing my notebook from her pocket. "She's been documenting my movements, my conversations, pages and pages of notes about me. It's like she's stalking me. I'm afraid for my safety." Gasps rippled through the gathering. Mark looked bewildered, his eyes darting between me and Melissa. "Mom?" His voice cracked. "What is she talking about?" Officer Bennett took the notebook, her expression neutral. "Ma'am, is this yours?" she asked me. My throat was dry. "Yes, but it's not what she's suggesting." "It's disturbing," Melissa continued, tears welling in her eyes. "She's been planning something. Look at the last page. There's a list of items. Rope, plastic sheets, bleach." "My grocery list," I said quietly, "for cleaning the patio furniture." The younger officer moved closer to his partner, both reviewing the notebook's contents. The silence around us was deafening. Something in me snapped. 5 years of watching my son slowly disappear into someone I didn't recognize. 5 years of calculated humiliations and manipulations. No more. "Officers," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I have been taking notes, but not for the reasons she's suggesting. I've been documenting a pattern of abuse." Mark's face drained of color. Melissa laughed, the sound brittle. "Abuse? That's ridiculous. Mark, tell them." All eyes turned to my son. He stood frozen, like a deer in headlights. "Mark," I said gently, "show them your arms." "This is absurd," Melissa cut in. "Mark is clumsy. Show them," I repeated, my eyes locked on my son's. The moment stretched like taffy. Then, slowly, Mark rolled up his sleeves. The bruises stood out stark against his skin, finger-shaped marks, some yellowing with age, others fresh and purple. Officer Bennett's demeanor changed instantly. "Sir, did someone do this to you?" Mark's eyes filled with tears. He nodded almost imperceptibly. "It's not just physical," I continued, feeling strangely calm in the storm. "My notebook documents everything: the isolation from friends and family, the control over finances, the emotional manipulation, the classic patterns." Melissa's face contorted. "You stupid old woman," she hissed, mask finally slipping. "No one will believe a man can be abused by his wife. That's not how it works." "Actually, ma'am," Officer Bennett said coolly, "that's exactly how domestic violence sometimes works, and threatening a victim that they won't be believed is textbook abuser behavior." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Melissa lunged toward Mark, screaming that he was pathetic, that he deserved everything. The officers intercepted her quickly, restraining her as she continued to shout threats. I walked over to my son, standing between him and the scene unfolding. For the first time in years, he didn't look away from me. I took his hand like I used to when he was small, and we walked together into the house, leaving the chaos behind us. The next few hours were a blur of statements and paperwork. Officer Bennett sat with Mark at my kitchen table, gently coaxing out years of hidden abuse. Tom and Susan sent the other guests home, fielding questions with vague explanations about a family emergency. The younger officer photographed Mark's injuries, not just the bruises on his arms, but others hidden beneath his clothing, each one a silent testament to what he'd endured. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked when we finally had a moment alone, the officers in the other room processing Melissa's arrest. Mark's eyes were red-rimmed, but clearer than I'd seen them in years. "She said no one would believe me, that they'd laugh." His voice broke. "That you'd be disappointed in me for not being man enough." I took his hands in mine. "I raised you to be kind, not to be what some twisted definition of a man should be." He nodded slowly. "She started with small things after we got married, criticizing, then controlling. The first time she hit me, she cried afterward, said it would never happen again." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Classic, right? Like a textbook." He looked down at our joined hands. "When she told me about Seattle, I knew it was to isolate me completely. I was terrified, Mom." The restraining order came through that evening. Melissa was released on bail the next morning, but forbidden from contacting Mark or coming near my home. Her parents arrived from Greenwich in their Mercedes, faces tight with embarrassment more than concern for their daughter. Her father tried to suggest it was all a misunderstanding, that perhaps Mark had mental health issues. Officer Bennett shut that down quickly. "We have evidence of sustained physical and emotional abuse," she told them flatly, "and your daughter's behavior at the scene corroborates the victim's statement." The weeks that followed brought unexpected revelations. Mark moved back into his old bedroom temporarily. During a meeting with the divorce attorney, we discovered Melissa had been draining their joint accounts for months, funneling money to a private account in her name. She'd also run up credit card debt in Mark's name. The attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Diane Schwartzman, assured Mark these financial abuses would strengthen his case. Male victims of domestic violence face unique challenges in the system, she explained, but Connecticut has made strides in recognizing that abuse doesn't discriminate by gender. One evening, while Mark was meeting with a support group for domestic violence survivors, I showed him my special bank account, the House Down Payment Fund. I was going to surprise you both, I explained, but now it's yours, for a fresh start, wherever you want. He stared at the balance, then at me. Mom, this is almost everything you have. And you're everything I have, I answered simply. An unexpected ally emerged in Melissa's younger sister, Charlotte. She contacted Mark through the attorney, asking to meet. Over coffee at a neutral location, she revealed this wasn't Melissa's first abusive relationship. She did the same to her college boyfriend, Charlotte confided. Our parents covered it up, got her therapy that she never took seriously. They've enabled her all her life. Charlotte provided a written statement for the divorce proceedings, detailing what she knew of her sister's history. It was a brave act of family betrayal and moral courage. As summer turned to fall, Mark began to heal. The divorce proceedings moved forward, with Melissa eventually accepting a settlement that included mandatory counseling. She moved to Florida with a job arranged by her father, as far from Connecticut as possible while staying on the East Coast. Mark found a small house in Mystic, close enough for regular visits, but with enough distance to establish independence. The down payment fund I'd saved made it possible. He started therapy, reconnected with old friends, and even began volunteering at a crisis center for abuse victims. The unexpected twist came in October when Mark brought home a brochure for the counseling center where he volunteered. They need a part-time nurse for health assessments, he said, sliding it across my kitchen table. Someone with experience being gentle with people who've been hurt. I hadn't worked since retiring 2 years earlier. The thought of using my nursing skills again, especially for this cause, lit something inside me I thought had dimmed. By Thanksgiving, both Mark and I had new purpose. My notebook, which had started as a record of pain, was returned by the police department. I put it away in my desk drawer, a reminder not of failure to protect my son, but of the moment when truth finally broke through. That Thanksgiving, we hosted a different kind of gathering. Mark's support group friends, my brother's family, and even Charlotte, who'd broken ties with her parents over their continued denial about Melissa. As I looked around the table, I realized we'd redefined family, not by blood or legal ties alone, but by who shows up when it matters, who speaks truth even when it's hard, who helps carry the burden when it's too heavy for one person alone. Looking back now, a year later, I realized that what I thought was a grocery list, mundane items like rope and bleach, became the unlikely catalyst for my son's freedom. Sometimes the smallest things can break the chains we don't even acknowledge. Mark is dating again, cautiously, a kind-hearted teacher he met through volunteer work. I've expanded my hours at the crisis center, using decades of nursing experience to help others heal. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, please remember, abuse has no gender, no socioeconomic boundary, no typical victim. The strength it takes to recognize it, document it, and break free is immense, whether it's happening to you or someone you love. Don't wait for a dramatic moment like mine. The notebook you keep today might be the lifeline someone needs tomorrow. If you found value in my story, please subscribe to this channel for more true experiences that might help others find their way out of darkness. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply bear witness to the truth and then act on it.